It's always raining, Emily said, as David sat down at her side. Always raining when you walk up that street towards me. I missed you, David whispered. Every minute, every second. I missed you too, Emily replied. Every day I wait. It's all I do, waiting here for you. This damn rain, David murmured. I hate it. I hate this bench. I hate this street. I hate the trees that line it. But then my heart lifts every time I see them, because I know you are here. I know you're waiting. I'll wait forever, Emily whispered. I'd wait until the trees were dust, until the houses crumbled, until time stopped. David turned towards her. I don't care how long it takes. I will be with you again, he said, his face filled with sadness. Emily turned away. It's not too late, you know. You could always find another, she said. You could have a family, a life, a new life with someone else. She wiped away her concealed tears with a cold hand. I met someone. 2 weeks ago, David muttered through his fingers as he rubbed his mouth. She's a few years younger than me. We got on really well. We even went on a date. Nothing happened, though, he said, shaking his head. We just talked, and for a fleeting second I considered letting go. Going out with her, being with her, I felt so guilty, so weak. But then I knew I couldn't. I knew I never could. I've avoided asking myself that question for so long, but then I've always known the answer. There can be only you. Emily threw her arms around him, but David sat motionless, except for a faint flicker of recognition on his face. Where does that leave me, though? He continued. Where does that leave my life? Will I come here every night at 9 p.m. until I'm old and grey? Until I can't walk? And what then? Emily frowned. How could I bear to see that? She answered. But how could I bear not to? David looked away and down the long road. As the misted rain fell light upon the leaves, it seemed to give the silence of that night a crackle, almost as if it were an old gramophone record he was listening to. I don't know if I can, he murmured. I don't know if I can come here forever for this unending torture. Emily's eyes filled again. Then you mustn't, she whispered, as a tear rolled down her cheek and fell cold upon David's hand. The feel of it made him gaze at that icy water droplet, the sorrowful recognition on his face, as if he knew what it meant and why it was there. Emily, he whispered. And then he rose and pulled the lapels of his coat high in a futile attempt to keep the rain from running down his neck. I have to go, he said through trembling lips. I cannot live like this. never to be with you, only ever to have this bench, this street, the rain and the unbearable pain. Emily reached out her hand and grasped his, but he slipped from her fingers, and she could only watch as he walked to the edge of the street and halted there, illuminated in the lights of a truck, the coming of which had halted his passage. Farewell, my love. One day I shall see you again, he whispered over his shoulder, the moment before he stepped forward. Emily stared, wide-eyed, as his shattered body was flung away from her. The sound of screeching tires filled the air, a terrible rending that forever scarred that scene for those unlucky enough to have heard it. A crushing blanket of silence then fell for an instant that drowned out those falling water droplets, the silence that was broken by the screams of the few that saw what lay in front of that truck. A smear of blood led to a pile of rags that contained the tattered corpse of what had but moments before been the living, breathing flesh of David. People ran to him pointlessly. Lights came, lights that flashed, and all the while Emily sat with her head in her hands. The rags and their dread contents were removed. The flashing lights were turned off. Those mechanical chariots of misery left, and silence returned. Midnight drifted past, and a young couple left the bar on the opposite side of the street, their strange chatter rattling about how this spot must be cursed, and wasn't it here that some young woman had died not 12 months ago? But they didn't see the figure of a man walking up the rain-soaked street towards them. They never acknowledged him as he brushed past them, walking towards the wooden bench where a young woman waited, her head in her hands. "My love," he said, as he reached out and touched her shoulder. She raised her head ever so slightly. "I did it for you, my angel. Now we can be together forever." "Yes," her voice hissed in response. David recoiled his fingers at the grating sound that greeted him. Then his Emily turned towards him to reveal a face rotted by the grave, a face twisted with unvented malice. You're not Emily," he stuttered. "No," the figure before him rasped. "I'm not." "Where is she?" David raged. "Your love waited for you, David. Waited for a whole month. For the month you never came, because you were too upset. Then she left, and I came and stood in the cloak of her skin, in her image, to please your inner eye. And you swore your love to me, gave your life for me, David." "I'll never love you," David cried out. "You're a monster, a vile monster." "Too late for that," she replied as she grabbed his wrist. "Those who die for love shall never be parted." He tore at her fetid fingers to free himself, but they became claws that hooked into his being with an unbreakable grip. The pallid grey jelly of her eyes then fixed his. "I've been lonely for so long, my love," she hissed. "Lonely in the grave. And now I'll never be lonely again. Forever and ever and ever." No one heard David's screams on the Rue de l'Arme that night, as the rain fell.